We're just hanging out. 7 minutes, high unique. I'm trying to figure out how to put the subject on there. You're here for VA benefits. Hey, Elmero. We're going over VA benefits in 5 minutes. Hey, Sarah. How's it going? Where are you tuning in from? I'm in Central California. Hey, Katie. Hello, hello. Hi, Jules. We will start shortly. Hi, Steve. We will start shortly. If you're here and you're curious about what we are doing here, it's WTF is up with the VA benefits. I did all the work, so you don't have to. So this is good if you are a veteran, you're about to get out, you have a family member, or if you work with veterans. It's important to know what is happening. Can I add text? I'm sorry, I'm a boomer too. I am a big boomer. Okay. I don't to put words up there, but I'll figure it out one of these days. What's important is that we want to get the information out. Hi, Veronica, Maestro. Good, Ed. Hello, hello. We're going to start shortly here. Oh, I need to share this over to Sacred Circles. Oh. Y'all gonna have to bear with me because I don't know how to operate TikTok Live. We will be going on about the changes, the proposed changes for the VA. Let me pull this up. Welcome, welcome. I'm pulling out my agenda. Let's go over these things. Learn about executive orders. Hello, hello. Hi, Carmen. Hi, Troy. Pagamunguia. Hello, hello. I love that picture. Hi, Corinne. Or Corinne. Two minutes. Hello, Wilbur. Yeah, a couple minutes before we start, we are going to be discussing VA benefits and the threat to VA benefits. And specifically, if you have benefits that involve mental health, PTSD, and PTSD as a consequence of MST. That is a whole lot of abbreviations, but hey, that's the military for you, right? Hi, Betty. Hello, hello. Where are you guys at? Where y'all at? I am in Central California. I have moved back here about a week ago. Hello, hello. Please share this if you know someone who needs information. If you can stick around and you want the information, you can email me or message me on this app, and I will add you to a list where we are going to be discussing and going over the threats to our veteran benefits. So, hi, if you don't know who I am, my name is Rosie Savage. Hey, Brian. And I am a veteran of the United States Navy. I am married right now to a Marine who's trying to retire. And hi, Kingsdall. Is it daughter? And I am a veteran. I'm a graduate with a MSW, and I specialize in policy. I am the CEO and founder. Hey, Brian. Thanks for joining us again. Of the Sacred Seed Circle not-for-profit organization, where I am committed to serving veterans, especially MST survivors, by giving psychological support and resources and education. So I am myself an MST survivor, and it took me 25 years to go to the VA. And so I understand the hesitancy. So I share my story, because storytelling is one of the best ways that we can affect another person. So I know that I've been kind of shitting in my pants about all these executive orders. And if you have Aaron Parnas, we got breaking news right now. And I'm just waiting for the VA is going to be dismantled. All right. So let's go over this quickly. Just briefly. We can go in depth. The more I can have specific subjects, but this is a general overview. First, we're going to talk about the executive orders. What are executive orders? And can the executive orders change a VA policy? Okay. And so the short answer to that, it cannot override an existing law. It has to operate within the authority of Congress. In the context of veterans' benefits, the president cannot unilaterally cancel or reduce statutory benefits by an executive order. So, in other words, they can't legally do that. There isn't going to be an executive order that is written that's going to get rid of your benefits unexpectedly. We're seeing it coming. We see it coming. So I found some stuff out right now. If you have not filed for benefits, you haven't filed your case, or if you are seeking to increase, hi water boy, I'm going to try to keep up. Okay. If you are seeking to increase your VA benefits, you need to go and do it today. If you have to leave this live and go and register with an intent to file. Hey, Candace. Hey, Ethan. You need to go do that right now. And I'm going to tell you why. Because if you're going to be evaluated, or you're for the first time, or for an increase, they will usually, this is unprecedented times, but typically what happens is that the policies that are in place at the time of your filing is the guidelines that will be used to determine your disability, if that makes sense. So they are going to be shifting some of the definitions, attempting to give time limits to certain diagnoses. So please, if you need to file, if you haven't filed, or if you need to make any changes, you need to do it as soon as possible, because it gets registered to the day that you filed. Kind of like when you file for divorce. Okay, so what the president can do, a president can influence how a veterans program is administered if, and this is what we are seeing. Hi, Jerica, Ivan, and Victoria, Ethan. What we are seeing is that under the guise of budget cut, and like, let's get rid of extra spending, under that, the president can order for evaluations of certain programs in the name of efficiency, so that the results from that will then influence policy and change policy. Specifically, one of the biggest challenges that they have right now is the privatization of healthcare, of the VA services. Now, what that means is that the VA right now is ran by the federal government. As such, the VA has the highest satisfaction ratings of any healthcare organization in the entire United States. The VA has higher ratings in safety, etc., than Kaiser or your local provider. Why? Because it is held to federal government standards. And just a little side note right now. How does or will the removal of the PACT Act funds from the budget affect VA claims and benefits? I have that. I just looked it up right now. They allegedly that it's going to make it easier to transition from 90 to 100 for a mental health diagnosis. But that's a great question, and I will touch on that as well. So, because it's being ran by the federal government, that is our blueprint for universal health care. That is what our government is capable of providing the population. So, obviously there's money and stuff involved, so I'm just saying, like, plan-wise, that the universal health care could look like that. So, if it's universal, if the federal government is running it, there's no money. in it for the government. And if there's no money, there's no incentive, right? However, you want to make some money, sell those contracts to outside doctors, outside shrinks, outside hospitals, and then you're going to sell it, right? You want contracts. So now Kaiser will see you instead of the VA, right? That's no longer covered, and other people are going to become rich because now they're going to receive the funds for VA patients. And this is being sold to us this way. If you are a veteran who lives in a rural area, I just moved into a rural area last week. The closest VA to me is an hour and a half away. There is a satellite clinic an hour away, and there is a big bus that comes into town twice a month to share resources and information for veterans. As such, if I wanted to go get medical care at the VA would have to reimburse me mileage. So, telehealth will help with that, but they want to do away with telehealth as well. And so I believe you can see where we can sell it to the public this way is we are already paying, and you will hear this. And if you don't know, I am a policy analyst. I specialized in the military policies and wrote military policies in grad school. And I'm currently studying how to change from the inside out. Okay, so that'll sound like it's cost efficient, right? Like, oh, see, now the veteran can go to the doctor in a place closer to them and people who know their community, and it's sold that way. So then the private sector is going to make money. It's a business. So that is probably one of the biggest pushes that they're pushing for, is to privatize the VA. Can they do that? Sure, they can. But I'd like to see them try. Okay, so in practice, meaningful reductions to core veteran benefits like disability or healthcare eligibility would almost certainly require congressional action. Okay, but as if you follow politics, you know that the Republicans have the House, and they own everything. So it could get passed. It could. It's a possibility. It would be wildly unpopular, and we have a lot of contracts with other businesses that could be affected, and I just don't see that we're going to go there. Hi, Ting Tang and Queen A26. All right. Direct benefit cuts are legally constrained. Oh, let me go back to telling you about filing for your claim. If you have a condition and you have been receiving disability for 5 or more years, that generally will be considered as stable. That's an ongoing condition. However, if you are in the 5 years or less, they can choose to do a reevaluation on your condition. So if you are at 5 years or less, you're at higher risk of having your benefits changed. Okay, so I have an outline. So I want to tighten disability ratings. So what that means is that they want to potentially lower ratings so that they lower the payments. So it'll be really hard to get like 60%, 70% it just makes it incredibly difficult to do so. So again, if you have not filed, you have an intent to file, you want an increase, you want to be reevaluated, you need to do so now. Because as you do so now, they will apply the policies that are currently in place right now to your case. Now, when everything changes, and it's a guarantee there's going to be changes, then those new ones will be applied, which will be incredibly more restrictive. And not only will it be more restrictive, and you'll have guidelines of how clinicians, providers evaluate your disability. Further, it'll be ran like with AI. You hit this point, this point, this point, this point, and it is what depose, deny, whatever. So it will be that system that makes the determination. Activities of not ending. Okay, so for example, if you have gout, if you had a disability with gout, and now your gout is better, they're going to evaluate that. So if you've ever gone to any training or paid for any training on how to apply for benefits, what to say, how to say it, what not to say, they will tell you, you never, ever, ever say, oh, it's better now. You never say that. Not to be shady and not to be deceitful, but because if you know anything, especially about mental health, you can say, oh, I feel great. I'm so much better. And then sometime later, you won't be. But they've reduced your disability. So keep that in mind. I will also probably hold a session to kind of walk you through that process and teach you what I've learned. Okay. So they also they want to limit the eligible conditions, that I just mentioned that, and the time that you have to file it. So as I mentioned, I went 25 years and then I went and I filed. And there are people who are in their 70s, 80s, they're Vietnam vets, Korean vets, maybe some World War II vets that you can walk into the VA and you can file, when you want. So with setting the time limit, it can possibly leave veterans that have conditions that develop subsequent to their service without resources. So financially, I can see how that makes sense, but we only know a little bit, and more is being discovered. And I suspect that the cuts in research might have something to do with that, because the more we know. Okay, so they want to limit it to 10 years. And y'all can tell me what y'all think about that. So this can dramatically change our current policy. Such a change again requires an act of Congress, but we are in unprecedented times, and I'm not necessarily sure. I know that judges' orders are being challenged. Okay, So the diagnoses that is going to be really affected is PTSD, mental health, and especially if you have PTSD as a consequence of MST. So you have post-traumatic stress disorder as a consequence of surviving a military sexual trauma. All right, so they want to give limits to that. It's completely opposite of what it is today. Today, you can walk in, any person can, they trying to key us off. I can't speak on that, but I know that they want to save money. That would be a way to do it. So that is on the chopping block, because they figure you should be better. And if you are an MST survivor, I want you, and even if you're not, if you're a veteran and you did what you did for your country, you should be outraged that they are now telling your fellow comrades, your sisters, your brothers, hey, that experience you had, that trauma, the military sexual trauma, that's just like having a bad morning. I am not joking. This is what was said. They likened the trauma and the results of trauma to having a bad morning. Another topic, and this one would actually be legally questionable, is they want to, well, the whole thing's legally questionable. Hi, Jazzy and SE Hunter, just breathe. Hello, welcome, Lucy. We are discussing the current changes in the VA. Another thing that's on the chopping block here is they want to eliminate concurrent benefits. And what that means is, if you are a retiree and you are getting, your retirement, you will have to pick one and not get both. Like you can't receive both payments. Currently, concurrent receipt of both is allowed by law, and with some restrictions have been lifted on that in the recent years. So an executive order could not nullify that on its own, but I want you to know that this is kind of the direction that they're trying to go, just so that you can plan ahead that this might be happening. This could happen, likely won't, but it's just good to know and not to panic, and instead plan for, and so that when you hear this, you're not going to be surprised and you will be prepared, because all this stuff is incredibly scary, especially for people who live off of this. So let's see. So they also want to restrict the VA healthcare eligibility. So you know how they have priority groups? Okay, so you could be in this priority group, this, and that's just like how they serve our population, is that we shall not provide medical benefits to veterans in low priority groups. So to take away the medical benefits for the low priority. And the low priority definition, of course, will be challenged and expanded. And the problem with that is that it's not only the VA that says, well, we're not going to give you medical benefits, but at the same time, a large portion of veterans are on Medicaid. and Medicaid and Medicare, and they're going to cut those. So it further marginalizes certain populations, and that's why that can be problematic. Okay. The VA can restrict healthcare access for certain groups if funding is insufficient. And so if the idea and the goal here is to save money, that's the justification for doing so. And I don't think that anybody here, I don't have to tell you that they've already eliminated trans care for veterans or gender affirming care. Okay. Any significant reduction in VA benefits via an executive order is difficult and would face significant legal hurdles. So I know that when we're hearing all of this, it's incredibly scary. No one knows what's going to happen, but I believed enough in this country to put a uniform on, and I'm willing to give my life for it. I gotta believe that that means something. That there's a lot to learn if that can get passed. Okay, so right now to date, no U.S. president has issued an executive order that explicitly reduces or eliminates veterans' entitlement to benefits like disability compensation or VA health care. And our current president has not signed any orders targeting veteran benefits for reduction, which also brings me to some of the other proposals that are out there, which include, they want to revamp the military and how it operates. And they want to obligate or order any school, any like high school, elementary schools, grade school, that everybody has to take the ASVAB. All the students, if you receive federal funding, everyone is to take the ASVAB. Further, they do the screening for enlistment, that the screening, currently the screenings include going through the potential service members' medical history, and then concluding from their medical history if they're fit to serve or not. They want to get rid of that and make it so it can expedite putting more service members out there. And then again, under the guise of privacy. This is a thing about privacy. Why are we looking through your personal medical information? It's not necessary. So you can, I can see that. That sounds good. But at the same time, if you have a high ACE score, you are more likely to be put in a situation where you are going to get more trauma. In other words, if you come into the service already having experienced some trauma, you are significantly at higher risk to being re-traumatized, because that's just the way that cookie crumbles. So knowing maybe that a potential service member is struggling with mental stability, hallucinations, things of that nature, that's important. That's important to know, especially if we are handing them pew-pews. So that is on the chopping block. We'll see if that happens. And let me go down. All right, so there are no executive orders from 2021 to 2024 that reduce coverage for PTSD, MST, or other service-connected orientation. Trying to get back to work full well knowing I'm going to be working around YT demons. I don't know where you work, but I understand that for right now. I understand. Let me go down to my agenda here. Let's see. Reduce. Okay, so obviously y'all know the hiring freezes and service delays. The people have been warned that with that freeze, that waiting time for appointments puts us at risk, right? So wouldn't this be a good time for us to say, hey, let's privatize it? We can't see you for that sprained ankle for like 4 months. But you know what? You know what would be better? If you could be seen today. And you could be seen by someone in your town. And that sounds so good. But that also transfers things over to the private sector, where now veterans will become, the target of potential healthcare providers. Okay. They ended remote work and DEI programs, which also is the reason why SAPR training, actual assault response training, has been put on hold by the Navy. It happened in February, mid-February. So no one is receiving training for prevention at this time. And it is because they needed to go back in and reevaluate the application of any form of DEI, of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which usually includes the mention of the women. So you'd have to change the curriculum. So if you have been involved in the military only uses one agency for this training, and it's NOVA. I'm a member of NOVA. I'm presenting at their conference this July. And so that also is concerning to me, because what I focus on is intergenerational trauma. And those are on the list of terms that are flagged. Okay, and why that's important, and if you were on here earlier, is that from what the data shows, is that 15% of service members that are in boot camp, who go to boot camp, have either had charges of either attempting or completing an essay, and they are still allowed to come into the military. The sober, drunken horse thief is still a horse thief. They're just a sober horse thief. And you could put a uniform on someone. There's still those things. And the reason why we should care collectively as a society is that these folks come into our communities. And too many times the public just gives, that approval, the safety, like, oh, it's a good guy. It's a veteran. It's a good guy. And it can put us in danger of giving someone too much credit. Okay, so that is one of the things that we don't talk about enough. And let me go down. Okay. Reevaluations. Reevaluations. If you want one, do it now. File it now. But if you have ratings and your ratings include things like mental health, or they're going after tinnitus, and that y'all might hear it being called tinnitus, which is the ringing in the ear. I don't know why. So unless it is associated with another condition, they are looking at that diagnosis, and they're looking at mental health diagnoses. Some of our policymakers accuse veterans of becoming dependent on the system, the VA system. So again, we go back to when you're being evaluated, being really, really thoughtful about the words that you use when they're interviewing you. Okay, so typically, so that no one's freaked out, they can ask to do a reevaluation of your disability every 2 to 5 years. Okay, so if I have the mindset of I want to save money, and I see that Rosie keeps getting gout, right? I have disability for gout, and I've been seeing the VA for gout for 6 years. The question becomes, why isn't Rosie better? Shouldn't she be getting better? So then if she's better, then we can lower her disability rating. I hope that makes sense. Now, those are your initial reevaluations. The people who I know have been receiving notices. Does the reevaluation thing include those who are rated permanent and total? It can, if they change what permanent means, if that makes sense. So initially, the answer to that would be no, right? But if I shift conditions over to not permanent, then that's where we can encounter a challenge. Yeah, no, thank you. That's a great question. If I can answer the questions, if y'all have any questions, I can look for them of what I referenced. One of the things that I did was that I got all of our current executive orders that affect the Department of Defense, and then I contrasted it to Project 2025 and seeing how they're matching and how they're thinking, which is really interesting. And I actually really do agree with this. They don't believe that any service member should be getting any additional help, like from WIC or from Medicaid or welfare or anything like the TANF. So with that, I can get with that they don't believe that that's the way we should live, and that we should maximize like the benefits we can give our active duty personnel, which it feels like they're talking out of both sides of their mouth, because on one side they say we only want the best, but then we're also we want to lower the standards. So make what you will out of that. I'm confuzzled about what that means. Now, there is some protected ratings. And again, I can tell you your speech is protected, right? And then they could go change the definition of what free speech means. So that's what I want to make sure that is coming across. So if you have a disability rating that has been in place for 5 years or more, the VA cannot reduce it unless there is evidence of sustained improvement under ordinary life conditions. And also, if you are a veteran who is aged 55 or older, and you're generally exempted from routine future examinations, unless, of course, you are requesting an increase in your disability. Okay. Again, the biggest changes here are the VA workforce and termination of gender affirming care. They are really looking into, again, let's look at this through a business lens. I don't agree with it, but let's look at this through a business lens. If I'm trying to cut money, if I'm trying to find ways to reduce how much money I am spending, I'm going to look at this program that today a veteran can walk in at any time to the VA and say, I was sexually assaulted and I would like to receive services. And the rule is, we believe you. Yeah, we believe you. You don't have to prove it. We're just going to believe you. So that has a big target on it, because you can argue that that encourages fraud. Why anybody would do that, that's on them. So that is what I for sure see coming. I absolutely do see this, and it's saddening, because the military, when they do their budgeting, the VA, my therapist had told me that the VA has, like, in reserves enough to keep going because they are separate from the Department of Defense. So that can go downhill, but the VA is good. And when the military creates this budget, it's under the assumption that every service member will be given 100% disability. So that's the projected cost. And some veterans don't ever go get benefits. Some have very little benefits. So if we have, people who are faking that, shame on them. But I don't think it's enough to make an impact. They made Kelly provide the CID case for proof last year. Wow. Yeah, and that's really difficult, right? Because, I waited 25 years until I was sick and tired of being sick and tired, when I can no longer continue to live in the skin. I can't, and I finally just was broken open, but it didn't feel that way at the time. I cannot imagine being in that place that I was at on November 10th of 2022 when I crawled into the VA. That I would have told my story, re-traumatized myself in the process, and then be asked to prove it. that is insulting. I don't know who this person is. I don't know. Don't send me things to co-host unless you want to co-host. We have to work that out beforehand. I am, if you are coming by here, I am the founder and CEO of Sacred Seeds Circle, and I provide services for MST survivors. Hey, oh my gosh. Okay, I see you. All right. Let's see. What else are we going? The ban, DEI, budget, reductions and reallocations. All right. So we're looking at reassessing eligibility standards, narrowing the definitions. I see you, Curry. I see you. All veterans that are rated for PTSD due to MST could be subject to reevaluation. And the VA could be directed to use stricter diagnostic or functional impairment thresholds. So how impaired are you? And they actually have like 5 things they look at. So if you have PTSD as a consequence of MST, I highly recommend you go and you look at the criterion that they are going to be using to evaluate like the severity of your symptoms. And one of them is like self-care, your ability to function, your executive functioning, like getting tasks done, things like that. And so it says from Project 2025, Daniel Gade project, he's a contributor and he's a former Trump administration official, argued that the VA disability system is too generous and promotes dependency, and he has specifically questioned the legitimacy of many PTSD claims, framing them as temporary issues rather than long-term disabilities. And the science would argue that that is not correct, but I'm not making the decisions. Administrative, I am almost for certain like they're gonna want to do automation of claims, and what that would look like is that a machine is configured ahead of time that if you hit these points, then you're approved and for this much, instead of how it is being done now. And that will be under the guise of reducing cost and getting decisions to veterans quicker. We will see denials, more denials, and reductions when the periodic reviews are being done. Okay. Current federal law provides some protections for established ratings. Again, 5 to 10 years, you have a stable disability, but be prepared that be asked, why aren't you better? CPAP, those of you with sleep apnea, I believe that the disability rating on that is 50%, and that is sleep apnea, but now they're going to want you to have apnea when you're not asleep. So it's also taking the day into consideration, not just during sleep. Benefit. Okay. All right, so any veterans that have other than honorable discharges, you're still eligible for your benefits, but again, Project 2025, and that's what I was cross-referencing while I was looking this up. I also looked to see what the precedence was, how how have things been done in the past, and that's what I could find. And one of the things I do is I always look at it from the lens of the people who are have opposing views for me. Okay, I think that wraps it up. You can get on an email list, and all of this stuff can be shared. And if you have information or there's something that you're curious about, like, by all means, reach out. And I anticipate that there will be delays and disturbances in the delivery of services, especially in support for, and if you're an MST survivor, it's supporting. I love you too, Brian. That we support people, MST survivor life, not just about what happened, because it's something that is carried through generations, and not only for MST survivors, but for those of us who live with PTSD. So make sure, if you're not following me on the Sacred Seeds, that you do. I couldn't go live from that page because I don't have enough followers. But share this, share the information, and just know that you fought for this country. Your service matters, and that we are not going down without a fight. Knowledge is power. So make sure you share it. All right. Talk to you soon. Bye.